Let's get some insights on the news that's shaping markets. For that, I want to welcome in Peter Tuchman, senior equity floor broker, Trade Moss, also known as the Einstein of Wall Street. All right, you know what's funny? When I was kind of getting set up to talk with you, I thought to myself, this was before where we are now with the S&P 500. Like, is this sustainable given the rally that we saw yesterday? Right. Clearly, it seems like at least it is for the second day in a row. So what's your take on this? You know, is the trend now moving back to, is the pendulum swinging back to bullish sentiment?
Well, look, I mean, we were in this. All eyes were on a deal with China. First of all eyes were on any kind of a deal. We've been promised a deal for the last number of weeks. After we saw that big sell-off from February 19th, and the market part of bottomed out mid-April, right? We were down 20% at one point, and then sort of the market climbed a wall of worry. It's an old Wall Street term. Basically, I think people's people's sentiment was that not getting a deal is so bad that we have to get a deal. So that was, we did have those amazing 9 days of a record rally, the first longest rally since 2004, which is amazing in the eyes of all this lack of clarity about the deal story. And then finally, this was what we were waiting for. This was the carrot that had been dangled. Any deal to begin with, and then the China deal.
The deal of all deals, basically.
Right. So apparently, a lot of things were going on. Backdoor diplomacy was happening. And, we still don't know a lot of particulars about the deal. The numbers are trickling down from 145 to almost maybe 30 or 20, which is significant, a huge significant change. It is still at a premium to what people had hoped. But think about it. A few days ago, we were looking at a massive global interruption of supply chain and 145% tariff. So this is the golden goose that I've been talking about, because I kept saying that, what, I can't imagine that we're not going to get a deal. That possibility is so dark. And that Mr. Trump was just going to sort of fly in on the golden goose and go, you know what, guys, I've pulled it out of a hat. I'm doing a deal with China. It's going to be a great deal. As he's always said, and so far it looks great. I'm gonna manifest the cup half full, going forward. So the fact that we do have a follow through today, a little bit on the upside, is a good thing, right? Because a lot of the days that we actually had rallies over the last couple of weeks in the middle of a lot of negativity, there was no follow through. Even at the end of the day, we saw sell-offs, and that sent a message to me that people I've lost a little bit of confidence in these rallies, that they don't know if we're up 1,000 today, we're going to wake up tomorrow and we're going to be down 1,000. So there's a lot of short-term profit taking. Today we feel like that there's a little bit of follow-through.
Yeah, and speaking of that, because when we were coming into today, before the CPI print, that's when you saw futures were a little soft, right? And then that CPI print came in better than expected, so it seemed to add some more, kind of fuel to the fire there. And I like the glass half full, because I think that's how many people are looking at it now, especially even people who had a more sour view, and it was understandable in the context of what information that we had. Previously, when we talked, you had described, and I think others had this similar view, that the tariff policy at the time caused this self-inflicted wound.
Correct.
Do we have essentially self-inflicted, for lack of a better way of characterizing it, healing happening now?
Absolutely. Look, sometimes, I know disrespect to the president, but sometimes when he has this amazing capability of creating a problem and then fixing that problem, right? And that's all good. I mean, look, my gut is that this is a negotiating tactic. That's the way he kind of works. And so if that's what this was, beautifully done. You know what? He ended up getting a deal that hopefully he's happy with. The market. Look, at the end of the day, we always joke. People here on the floor always joke with me. I always say the market's doing what it wants to do. The market tells you what it thinks of the information. When you have a sustainable rally after a really solid big footprint rally yesterday, and then a follow through today. Look, the only thing that's really keeping this market from being completely green is UnitedHealth. Now, we can go back to that story for a minute, because it is important.
I do want your thoughts.
Okay, so over the last couple of weeks, one of the things that was really distressing before we got a deal with China, when things were really looking dark, was the fact that companies were not able to give guidance. We've got to go back to November 2021, when Jamie Dimon came out in the midst of COVID, and for the first time in a long time said, you know what, we do not have enough information. Everyone needs to know, right? Earnings are what happened last week, guidance what happens next week. And so when you don't have enough information and there's all that uncertainty, to the point where you actually, a company cannot report guidance about what it looks like, that's scary.
Right.
So we saw a number of different scenarios play out. We saw, like, whether it was United Airlines or whatnot, actually presented guidance in case of a recession and in case of a not recession. Then we had people who were just postponing earning and guidance releases altogether. And then there were some that just could not give guidance because they did not have the information. That presents a scenario where, look, up until we started this deal with China, what we ended up having was the pressure on growth, right? The fear was that why aren't we cutting rates when the market is sort of feels a little fragile? It's because the tariff scenario has sent us into a bit of a tailspin as far as growth goes. And if you lower interest rates in a low growth or no growth environment, what you end up with is stagflation, and that's something we don't want because it's way harder to find a solution to that.
Let me ask you this. So we got the news that Coinbase is going to be entering the S&P 500.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't
and
see
I know
that.
you trade the S&P 500. What does that say to you about, I mean, just, you know, the role of cryptocurrency now?
Well, you know what? Look, I think I like it. I like it. I think, I think it's being accepted in so many different ways. It's definitely shown itself as a substantial entity. You've got Bitcoin going above 100,000 again, right? For a while people were hoping it was either a hedge against the market, and it turned out not to be. It went down when the market went down, it went up when the market went up, and that's fine too. The fact that it does have a role and a bigger role in the landscape that Mr. Trump has talked about, with a Federal Reserve entity around Bitcoin and around crypto in general, it being added is significant.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you're seeing shares of Coinbase rally on this news that it'll be added to the S&P 500 as of Monday, and now people will have exposure whether they like it or not.
Well, then, you know what, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, and overall now, as it stands now that we have more clarity, because I think most people were surprised, not so much by their coming to some sort of resolution between the U.S. and China, but how rapid it was. Where do we go from here? What's your long-term outlook for the market this year?
Oh my God! I do not have a crystal ball, and I would be remiss and in the new world of the new administration, where we're one tweet away from crazy town. I'm hopeful. Now that we have this is a big deal. We still need the particulars of the deal. Look, week to week, and I'm hoping this creates a momentum. Everyone was talking about, so even Jim Cramer said, we need a reason for people to start buying the market again. And so this clarity is giving a sense for people to start buying the market again. I am hopeful that this will start to create the momentum going forward for more deals. That's what we need. We need to come away from all of this uncertainty. And at the end of the day, you want to make America great again. These deals need to be made country by country. Now we need to see good deals, right? And so that, because what we don't want is to impact small business in a negative way and big business. We saw Ford and GM not be able to give guidance because of the ramifications of tariffs. That's huge, right? I mean, and more importantly for me, the small business, being impacted in such a big way by this. We don't want that. We want to return to a growth scenario. 23 and 24 were great years for the market, for the S&P, for small business. We want to see that happen again. We do not want this self-inflicted wound to bleed any longer. We want it to heal. We want to heal the relationships going forward, and we want to be super positive and hopeful for the rest of the year.
All right. Well, certainly it looks positive by the S&P 500.
So far, and so far so good. That number is very significant. 588 is my badge number, and that's also a very significant number in Chinese culture. It means prosperity and money.
Okay.
So
prosperity
dig
and money.
that.
There you have
588. Let's go.
Yeah, there we go. All right. That's Peter Tuchman, senior floor equity broker for TradeMoss, also the Einstein of Wall Street.